All right, welcome back here to BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. Drive Safe. Dave here with a full panel of people. We've got Tanya Jolliffe, founder and provider of LIT Wellness Solution. Good morning, Tanya. How are you?
Doing well, doing
All right.
well.
And Bob Perry, consultant at aspire.com and also Fit to Pass. How you doing, Bob?
It's all good, my friend. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you as well. And Dean Croke, principal analyst for DAT, Freight, and Analytics. How are you doing today, sir?
Good to be with you, Dave. Thank you for having me.
All right. Listen, let's jump right into it. I'm just going to kind of open the floor up a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about, I think it's having been a driver for a long period of time, it's something that you just dealt with on a regular, ongoing basis. And that was sleep deprivation. I mean, how many true drivers out there could honestly say they didn't drive sleepy? But how important is it that we talk about sleep as a priority for a driver? Go ahead and shoot me right off, Tanya, if you would.
Well, I will. I want to give you some statistics because you were just talking about impaired driving. So, did you know that recent studies, and I just pulled this up as you were talking. People who are awake for 18 hours have the same level of impairment behind the wheel as someone with a blood alcohol content of 0.05. People awake for 24 hours experience impairment equal to a blood alcohol content of 0.10%, which is higher than the legal limit of 0.08 in most states. So driving impaired is a safety risk, and sleep is imperative. And we've got to help people understand that and be able to accomplish it.
So let me just ask you, and I'll just jump right in, Bob, and we all know that sleep's important. Now, we've all gone to work tired. Every single one of us here in this panel has gone to work tired. Why is it we find this so much different than anybody else going to work tired? Bob?
Well, it's because, we're not driving that big, missile down the highway, right? And I mean, one little split second nod or distraction, and it could get ugly real quick. It's that's why it's imperative. But, once again, a lot of times, especially over the road drivers, people just don't realize that, and you probably do, Dave, from your time driving, but you're out there and you finally get a place to park, which is pretty tough these days. And you're parked in there and you don't know who you're beside. It could be a cattle car, trucks coming in all times of night, blowing air horns and all that. It's just a lot of distraction. Is it really, really true sleep to get to a point where you're really resting comfortably? That's why I've always been a big champion of talking to drivers about you got to get your bunk fit ready, and meaning ready that it's comfortable, it's a space that you're used to. Like I don't drive obviously anymore, but I travel, and what I try to do when I go to the hotels, I try to make it and keep within the same routine I do when I'm at home. And it's not always easy, but try to keep it on the same type of schedule, eating, what I eat, all those kind of fun things. But for drivers, it's very difficult because they stop, right? They stop like, okay, they pull over and we're going to go to bed. I mean, they got family to call, they got laundry to do, they got personal business to take care of, all those things. We just got to help them do a better job of managing that and educating them. We just don't do enough to educate the drivers on what it's really like out on the road, living on the road, and most of them is trial and error, and they got to figure it out on their own, and that shouldn't be. I wrote an article not too long ago, last month I think it was, for the trucker. I talked about who's responsible for the driver's health. Is it the driver or is it the carrier? And at the end, my opinion is hey, listen, we're all responsible for our own personal health, right? But if you read the CDC, what they have to say, they talk about that, being a professional driver comes with a lot of, dangers to health. And so we're bringing people in an environment that we should help give them tools and how to protect themselves.
We talk about, Dean, I will tell you that I truly believe that the ELD mandate, which came out, did a couple of things. And one of the things that it allowed for us to do was actually have a better situation in which it provided drivers to get much of the needed rest that they had, because I've had many drivers tell me that before then they didn't, but once they use the ELD correctly, they are getting better rest. Why is it so important that we continue to gather data on sleep deprivation and sleep habits and for out there on the road? Because I know you do that a lot. Why is that so important?
Well, since ELDs came along, they actually provide a data stream where you can predict sleep. In fact, you can, some of the very early studies we did when I first moved here in 2000, we took paper logs and converted them into an electronic data stream by manually key punching in logs for 600 drivers. And it turns out that once you put in a driver's work and rest patterns, you can predict sleep really accurately. So we've built some models from ELD data feeds that can predict human alertness down to the minute. And with ELD data feeds now, you can bring, and this is done at a previous company of mine, we took ELD data straight off the ECM, fed it into our accident severity model, predicted sleep. And what we did is we mapped the driver's work pattern to other drivers that had had single vehicle lane departures in the past. So what you can do from ELD data, it's a fantastic data set, it's very reliable, very clean, very consistent, it's high speed. You can actually predict which drivers in each hour are most likely going to have some sort of accident that mirrors accidents in the past. And it's not all drivers, Dave, it's typically drivers that have a fatigue risk score of over 60. So on a scale of 0 to 100, 0 is no risk, 100 is high risk. You and I would have a score of about 10 if we work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. To give you a sense of perspective, a 90 would be a mass intern working 36 on, 12 off. Someone that works 5 nights driving a truck would score about 60. So when you get over 60, what we find is you have a 5 times higher probability of a DOT recordable accident. So the data feed, Dave, is really, really helpful in finding out which drivers in your business have a propensity to have accidents on the road, and it's always about 12 to 15% of all of your drivers. It's not all drivers, but what the data does, it allows you to isolate the drivers that have schedules that are high risk, and then you can target some countermeasures with them and treat them differently, rather than just blanketly sending out a message to all drivers, be careful, don't drive tired, all those sorts of things that are rather useless in the broad scheme of things.
Yeah, because we've all said, "Hey, be careful out there," that's not the end-all, be-all answer for whenever you're talking to a driver. Because we want them to be careful out there. But I do think this leads this conversation that we're having. It becomes a little bit more than just the driver's responsibility on ensuring that they get their sleep. And as a carrier provider or as society as a whole, Tanya, aren't we really contributing and adding to the health and the wellness, not only of the driver, but ensuring that they get better sleep? Isn't that what ultimately we're doing?
Definitely. It's health and wellness all in a package. And as we talked before, it's whole people with whole lives. And sleep is a big component of that. Sleep is when the body regenerates itself. Sleep is when the mind regenerates itself. And so we have to have that restful sleep. When we get focused on numbers of hours, well, I can lay in a bed for 8 hours, but I won't get 8 hours of restful sleep. I'm just not made that way.
Neither
but
am
if I can get 5 hours of restful sleep, I'm good. But it's you got to know your body, and we have to know ourselves, and we have to know our environment, and a driver, different situations and different things, and it's health and well-being, and it's helping them understand strategies that feed into fatigue and how to relieve that fatigue. And a company should care about the sleep that their people are getting, the quality of sleep that they're getting. They should be providing them with the support to get it. For instance, an eye mask. That's a simple thing that you can provide to your drivers. If they have to sleep during the day, their whole melatonin system is totally off. So that is something you should be, I think, providing to them as a nighttime driver to support them and encourage them. Earplugs. You're asking them to sleep during the day at a truck stop when everybody's in and out all day long, and then being surprised that they didn't get any restful sleep, but they're back out on the road when their time's up and they've got to hit the road. So there are things and strategies companies can do to help ensure and support the driver in his efforts or her efforts to get restful sleep.
I'm going to, thanks, Tanya. And I agree 100%. I think it's a lot of our responsibilities. I think we're all on the watch. Bob, let me ask you a quick question. Here's my deal on this. How do we, first of all, and I want to start with the driver, because I'm going to tell you right now, and it was me and I'm guilty of it, how much is it in denial that we tell ourselves we're not sleepy? Hey, I'm good to go. I can roll 600 today. How much is it that we need to be honest with ourselves, not only about our health and wellness, but also about how much rest we've gotten, and that we may need to stop it? I mean, isn't that very important that first of all we get past that denial phase with the drivers?
Well, yeah, because none of this happens until you get your head right. And you got to get your head wrapped around it and really understand it, and accept it. But at the same time, I just came back from a really great 2-day session up in D.C. With veterans coming into the trucking. And one of the things they really talked about is that I hope that this gets adapted into the trucking is we don't do a really good job of setting up the expectations for these folks when they come in and what it's really going to be like and what's expected and what they're going to, like Tanya was saying, what we're going to do to help support them if they're got to run at night instead during the day. I mean, it's a whole different than what you're geared for, right? And how you're going to do that. But you're exactly right. We have to learn to accept. That's why now, Dave might know the current statistics, but I haven't seen them lately. But I remember some time ago that one of the most dangerous times, right, when drivers come back to work is after they've been off for 2 or 3 days, right? They're, because they're on a different mode of sleep.
They're exhausted, Bob. I can tell you personally, I come home, when I drove, my wife would have my honey-do list completely lined up, and I was ready to go back to work so I could get some rest.
Yeah.
Because I had to fix the door that wasn't swinging right. I had to go out and get the yard mowed. And then I was like, oh my God, I've got to get on the road or she's going to kill me. But I'm just saying that they are exhausted when they get back because they're trying to solve their life's issues. But my deal is, and I've always been in the deal is that first day back from being off is not the strongest day for the driver out there. It's not their best day. It's not that's not it. But how do we tell because I know on a regular run pattern, that I'm out there, 600 miles a day is good. I can knock that out, but that first day is not there. And how do we get our drivers to honestly, Bob, tell ourselves, like you said, get their head right about saying, you know what, I suck the first day, but I know I need to rest. How do we do that?
Well, it all comes back to the same thing we always talk about. It's the training, it's the education, and especially where we're trying to bring in this new generation coming in. And this came up also too with several of the the original equipment manufacturers, the tractor, and making it more conducive to the younger generation of the inside of the cab, make it more empowering, right? And so it is because they live in there, and you've got to create an environment that makes them feel comfortable. But it all comes back to education and what you fuel yourself with. That's the biggest thing. I'm sure Tanya can, from her background, and she's a pro in that area, it's like what you feed yourself that day before, that you're going to, feel like the next day, and you're going to be running on energy and not running on empty.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So, Dean, here it is. We talk about this, and we talk about hours of service. And we're talking about, and at the same line with a carrier and guys out there, we're talking about productivity. And then we're talking about sleep schedules. Here's my question. With only one parking space for every 11 trucks out there on the road, how productive can drivers truly be trying to find a place to get some rest? And what are the real numbers that you see showing these carriers and these shippers and these receivers and everybody out there that these guys are going to need some help in order to be not only safe, but well, and get the things done that they need to get done and be safe doing it?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things that we found from all the hundreds and hundreds of sleep classes I've done, and by the way, my sleep classes always involve the spouse and the teenage children because, as you said, the home sleep schedule is not managed by the driver. It is managed by the other folks at home. So if your education, as Bob talks about, isn't done with everybody involved, it's pretty much a waste of time because the drivers will always say, this is great, but you don't know my significant other. And so one of the data points that I think is really, really important, and a lot of carriers miss this, again, it comes back to the data that's in the ELD, is a data point called shift start variation. One of the ways you can equip drivers to be better skilled, better, have better memory, have better cognition, better vigilance on the road, just behave better as people, is to get good sleep quality. And one of the ways you do that is you look at all of your drivers who have a data point. It's called shift start variation. One of the things the human body needs is sleep at the same time in the same place every day. And one of the worst things fleets do to drivers is have inconsistent start times. Because if you start at a different time every day, it means your sleep is at a different time every day. One of the things that I've found over the years of implementing safety programs for fleets, when you lock down the start time for drivers, all sorts of good things happen because you lock in the sleep. And the data shows that well-rested truckers that go through sleep classes within the confines of the hour's service run about 10% more miles per tractor week. That's only about 60 miles more per day. And it's really just one or two less truck stops you're dragging your tired butt in and out of each day. It doesn't take much to run 60 more miles a day, but over a year, 10% really makes a difference. But the most important thing is starting at the same time every day. From that, good sleep quality starts to emerge, and then you make better decisions about food, lifestyle, all sorts of things.
Here we are, we're talking about better decisions making, and you don't make great decisions when you're exhausted. I mean, that's probably one of the main reasons we're talking here about sleep, is because of how dangerous it is out there on the road. Most of the time when we talk about sleep-deprived drivers, we're just talking about how dangerous they can be behind the wheel. But really, and I know that, Tanya, you talk about this all the time, it's that right there matters on their decisions for food. It matters on their decisions for life. It matters on their decisions on who they're going to be and the way they look at each other, right? I mean, an exhausted person doesn't do well in all of those. When I'm tired, I don't want to take the extra time to get the right food. I'm going to get the hot dog and the soda pop, and I'm going to, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about too.
Well, we're looking at a way to solve a problem, right? And the problem is that we're tired. And so we're going to pick the candy bar that's going to give us the sugar high. But there's going to be a big crash that comes after that that's going to actually make you even more tired than you were before you did it. Same with the soda. Same with the weenie on the roller. Same with the non-nutrient rich foods. But it's the same in our other areas of well-being as well. Some of the biggest, I think, fights or disagreements between dispatch and a driver, I think, come with a tired driver who just does not have the patience for the conversation. And, we have to look at the whole thing. And, you asked a question a little while ago, and I want to just throw a thought out here. We're talking countercultural. And it does come back to wellness culture in a company. And I know I sound like a broken record, but it really is the truth, because a driver has to have the safety and the trust in their leader to come and say, hey, I'm not functioning on all cylinders today. I don't think I can roll for 600. I think I'm really only good for 400. Who's going to go to their boss and say that in a climate that they feel like their job's in jeopardy? If they ever dared to say that. We've got to build trust. We've got to build loyalty. We've got to build camaraderie and teamwork, that we're all in this together, and your safety and well-being, and as a person, is our safety and well-being as a company.
I agree 100%, and I'm going to even expound on that. Bob, how important is it to be able to go and say, how important should you get the support and honestly get the right support if a driver says, I'm tired. Okay, I'm tired, and I don't want to be made feel guilty. I don't want to be made feel bad. I'm tired. I can't go out here and do this right. How important is the driver be supported? And if the driver's not supported, should he go find some place that he is supported in when those things happen?
Well, that's part of when you're getting hired on, and you know that. And Tanya's right. I mean, it shouldn't be down to the driver. I mean, it should be the driver manager because they see their load. I mean, what they're doing, right? When they're out there, what they got to go, and they should be saying, "Hey, you know, Bob, how you doing today? How you feeling?" You know, check in with them, and they should be proactive in asking that question, so the driver doesn't feel like, "Gosh, I can't say that. I can't." But they'll take me off the road, or I'm going to get dropped down, or whatever, because they're afraid of abusing. But they need to be able to be proactive and check in and say, "Hey, how you feeling? You okay?" Today. And you know, Dean, I want to back up to what Dean said, which is, I think, so important for drivers. When they're coming, you got to get the spouse involved. I mean, she has to be part of the training, I believe, and to understand. Maybe obviously not all of it, but when you get down to this part of the lifestyle, so if they understand, because I remember, I don't know if you folks were around, you remember we used to have the old GAT show in Dallas. You know, that show, I remember we had the biggest engagement in drivers getting health screenings that we were doing there. And the reason why is because the wife was with them. And the wife would bring them over and say, "I want to know what's going on. You need to know." And it just was a real eye opener. That's why I believe the spouse has got to be involved. But Tanya said, the company's it's got to come from the top. It's got to be part of the training process. It's got to be part of the onboarding that you're managing. Now, if somebody's milking it or really trying to take advantage of it, that's a different story. But you can tell that in the production what's going on. But you know, we're so jammed for drivers that it's just, you know, the culture is just get them in here, man. I need 50, and if I get 50, I think I can get 10. And it's just, you know, it's nuts. I mean, you know, that was a big conversation this weekend. I mean, who has a business like that? I mean, you know, it just doesn't make sense, but they're so crunched for the, you know, driver to move the product.
It really is a short-term, though, solution to a long-term problem. And you're not fixing the problem. You're not making it better. You're not keeping a driver in that seat. So if your goal is to keep drivers in seats, you got to have a wider view to be able to keep those drivers educated and environment and in all of those pieces and parts together that can allow you to sustain a driver workforce. This constant turnover is because it's a lifestyle that can't be maintained. Those days are over. And we have to understand that and bring in a new way of doing things.
Let me ask you this, Dean. I know typically we can get better at creating better sleep schedules by the data, correct? We as a team can actually do that by looking at what you're talking about. How do we as a team in the data, how do we measure how important that time off is as well to the success of the next week? I mean, can we do that by the data that you're getting?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. One of the keys is education that Bob mentioned earlier. Education is absolutely critical, but it's not education just for the driver, because the driver's tiredness and sleep deprivation is a function of how the company is managed. So that's where management comes into the equation. But educating the spouse and everybody at home, once you educate everybody and give them the tools, they will start to figure out very quickly after a good night's sleep that this sort of technology really works, and they can do this without stimulants, without feeling tired, without taking risks. And so education is key. You've got to educate the dispatcher, the driver manager, safety managers. Everybody has to be in tune, right down to the driver manager has to be able to understand a tired voice inflection. So when they're talking to the driver, it's not just about the words, it's about how they sound. But when you look at drivers as a whole, again, just knowing which drivers to talk to is absolutely important. Other data points, Dave, take the home zip to the terminal zip. If a driver drives too far to work, then their total work day, when you add the 11 hours or the 14, their extended time awake can be very, very very dangerous. We've seen some big accidents where drivers have had their extended workday up around 18 hours, even though they've only been on duty for 11 when you commute long distances. So data points around home zip codes are very important so that you've got the shortest possible commute. But basically it's education. But Dave, you've got to engineer this into how you run the business. It's not a safety program, it's how you run the company. And the really successful companies manage their schedules around the driver's sleep pattern. It's like not negotiable. And when they do that, they get better productivity, lower turnover, and fewer service failures. But education is at the very heart of it.
This is, and I'm just going to leave this open to you. This has been a problem in trucking probably since the minute we all expected them to grab the next load, right? I mean, this isn't a new issue, what we're talking about here being tired. I think some of the things that have helped come it to light are some of the incredible amount of court cases that have come out of it, and also the reaction that we've done to try to coerce drivers into driving when they are tired. I think there's been some education in the process, but really, I like the idea, but there are so many holes in trying to get drivers to get rest. I think as we continue to talk about it, good eating habits, good, having a place to park easily, having good time off. I mean, as we sit here and talk, I can tell you, not looking at that windshield is important when you are away from it. I mean, we talk about a little bit about what you do to be prepared for it, but I'm telling you, that 34 hours that you're off, you shouldn't really spend it in the truck. I mean, people say, take a 34, get your 34 in and then get rolling again, but they want them to do it right there in the truck in Butte, Montana. I mean, how much rest and what are you getting done to make sure that it's not, you're really resting the person? I just open that up to you really quickly. How often do we use common sense when we talk to our people about rest? I'll just ask that same question to you, and I'll bounce it around there. Tanya, you go first.
Well, again, we have to understand that we are each an experiment of one. We are an individual, and no two people are rested in the same way. And understanding that there is no one size fits all, just like there isn't for weight loss or health or anything else. And so you have to treat each person as an individual and find out what will be restful for you. One of the things that I think is so amazing is we give sick days, sick days, sick days. Why don't we give health and wellness days? Why don't we give well-being days to go use when you're feeling good, to be rested, to make the most of your life? We want to just focus on being sick, and we just, rest comes in a whole variety of packages. Some people can go sit out and read a book and be rested. They don't have to be sleeping, but they also have to have that restful sleep. And you're not going to get it in a truck for those hours any better when you're off than when you're on duty and just, between stops. So we've just got to look at it differently. We've got to look at health, wellness, sleeping. Sleeping is part of health and wellness. It's part of that whole package. And we've got to look at how we do it and do it differently.
Bob, same question.
Yeah, and how you deliver it to that driver, right? And that family, so that you make sure you get their support. Tanya's right. I mean, no two people are the same, but it's just got to be part of the education. I know I keep going back to that, and find out what works for that particular driver. And Tanya brought up a great point. You know how many people you probably have talked to that they build up those sick days, right? So they can take them and they come to work sick because they don't want the day and because they want to save those. This will be their tournament at the end of the year. But she's right. Why don't you give people a day off because they're feeling really good when you can enjoy it and be productive and come back to work the next day, better than you were the day before. I just think a lot of things are thought differently, and we just got to get to a point where we get, whether it's fresh blood or looking at it differently, to do things differently. I know that, you see more of they've changed from, you don't have, you have more automatic. so it makes it easier. Better, you attract more people, make it easier to come into the marketplace because you don't have a stick. It's automatic. We know that they're pushing hard to have the trucks, to make some of these long haul runs to do that. But you're still going to need drivers regardless. But we've just got to do a better job of preparing them, and it's a tough road to hoe because once again, it's all because we're running from behind because we don't have enough drivers to take the freight that's coming in. And you got to look at the shippers, right? I mean, they got to play a part in this because they're beating you up because they want you there and be on time and so forth. You get there and what happens?
Make you wait.
Yeah, exactly. You're sitting there, you're waiting, you're thinking, and just think of us when you're not driving a truck and you go someplace, you got an appointment, you're sitting there and you're waiting and you're waiting, you're getting anxious, you're waiting 2 hours or whatever it is, right? I mean, you're losing time out of your day, and you're thinking about how am I going to make this up? How else? You go without. You go without either family time, you go without sleep, you put something else in front of it. And so it's a tough job. But you got to have support from the company, and that really comes from the top.
I agree with you 100% on that, Bob. All right, Dean, the same question thrown at you, but I'm just going to put a little twist on it. We want to get them the rest, and we set it to a schedule, and we kind of adhere to it. But I got a hot load. I got a load that's got to be delivered. This load's hot. The customer called. They're going to shut down the plant. What do I do?
So most TMS systems are going to allocate a driver to a load based on available hours. And I will tell you that not every driver, and if you do it with the driver with the most available hours first, he may not be the safest driver. Typically, if you use some sort of data point to find out how tired the driver is, but it could be as crude as saying, hey, this driver's, even though he's got plenty of hours, he's just worked 5 nights in a row, he's not my hot load guy. When I would dispatch drivers on hot loads, I would always find a driver that's had plenty of sleep. So the last thing you do is put a hot load on a tired driver. That's just setting yourself up for failure. So that's the answer to the first question. And going back to the sort of more general question, one of the reasons drivers have a peak turnover rate and quit voluntarily at 90 days, it takes about 90 days for the brain to turn to mush, jello. When you go from a new hire who's been sleeping at night all of their life, and then you put them into a truck with irregular schedules, it takes about 90 days for cumulative fatigue to wear the human brain down to the point where they make really bad decisions. They will quit over the slightest reason. Their behavior changes completely. So one of the things that Bob talks about, setting people up for expectations, we do a lot of work to set drivers up for failure, and as an industry we do a terrible job at turning drivers into professional careers. We find it's very hard to transition past this 90-day period because we have no mechanism, no safety net to make sure drivers are getting good quality rest and nutrition out of the gate. And then we try to chase our tail by bringing more drivers in. So there's a lot to be done. Education's key, but I would say education on its own is not the sole solution. You have to really re-engineer your schedules. You have to think about those hot loads, who gets the hot loads, right down to planning trips. Telling drivers that saying to drivers pull over when you're tired is completely inaccurate, because one day you'll be wrong and you'll miss it. What you should teach drivers is pull over when you're not tired, right? Because pulling over when you're tired is like saying drink water when you're thirsty. It's too late. Mm-hmm. And pulling over when you're tired invariably is too late. It's going to be too late one day. So I guess I'm using that example to say that you've got to completely rethink about how you run your business and engineer safety into everything you do, not just make it a program that the safety department manages.
I do appreciate it. Hey, I want to thank each and every one of y'all for coming out. This is a conversation that needs to continue to happen on a regular basis. This is a conversation I think that I really don't think most people that's not within the industry understand driving tired like that on a regular basis. I don't really think it's well known, but I genuinely like the conversations that we're having about some of the solutions that are possible. I want to thank each of you for being here and coming on the show and talking about fatigue driving. We will ask each of y'all back again because I think this is something that we got to continue to talk about in many, many aspects. I want to thank everybody for coming in. Tanya, Bob, Dean, thank y'all for coming, man. I hope y'all have a great and wonderful holiday. Happy holidays to each and every one of you, and I hope the Christmas bodes you well and you get what you want for Christmas.
Hey, can I say
Thanks
one
so
thing?
much.
When we come back next time, I really would like to have Dean talk to us about how many of these folks don't want to know the data, don't want to know the real number because they're afraid of the liability.
There are
It's a long
many.
list.
There's a long list of those, Bob. I can assure you. Don't want to
Yeah.
see the truth, because we've always done it this way. Why would we do it any different? Hey guys, have a great happy holidays. Thanks a lot.
Adios.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.